Janitor finds Barron Trump in school. What he does next leaves everyone in awe. A quiet school day, where everything seemed ordinary, was about to take a turn no one could have predicted. The bell had just rung, and students were scattered in their classrooms, diligently working away at their lessons, as teachers kept an eye on every corner of the room. But in the midst of the mundane, something extraordinary was unfolding, something that would change the lives of a few individuals and set the entire school on a path they never saw coming. It was the kind of morning that didn't stand out, until it did. A janitor, a simple, unassuming man who had worked at this school for years, quietly went about his usual routine. To most, he was invisible, just another face in the crowd, with his mop, cleaning supplies, and the routine tasks that filled his days. But today, he would become a witness to a secret, one so powerful that it would leave everyone around him in awe. As he mopped the hallway, he caught a glimpse of someone walking quietly down the corridor, someone who didn't belong there. It wasn't a student, it wasn't a teacher. It was Barron Trump, the young son of the former president. His presence here was a complete surprise. No one in the school had been expecting him, and yet there he was. Barron Trump, in the middle of an ordinary school day, far away from the world of politics and cameras that usually surrounded his family. The janitor froze for a moment, not entirely sure of what to do next. Was he seeing things? Was this some sort of elaborate prank? His mind raced as he tried to piece together what was going on. Was Barron lost? Was he here on some special visit, or had something more mysterious brought him here? The janitor, whose life usually revolved around routine cleaning, suddenly found himself caught in a web of intrigue that no one would ever expect. It wasn't every day that you saw the son of a former president wandering the hallways of a high school. But what happened next, what the janitor did, would not only change his life, but also the lives of many others in ways they could never have imagined. As the janitor cautiously approached Barron, a sense of uncertainty washed over him. He had always been a man of simple actions, sweeping floors, wiping windows, cleaning classrooms, but this was different. He wasn't just cleaning anymore. He was standing face to face with someone who was part of an entirely different world. Barron looked up at the janitor with a mixture of curiosity and perhaps a bit of nervousness, as though he didn't quite know where to turn next either. The janitor hesitated for a second, but quickly realized that this wasn't the time for confusion. Something had brought Barron here, and whether it was an accident or a purposeful decision, he was about to find out. With a gentle, reassuring voice, the janitor asked, "Are you lost, kid?" Barron looked at him for a moment, his face thoughtful as he seemed to weigh his response. There was something about his demeanor that suggested he wasn't just any student lost in the halls. No, this was different. This was Barron Trump. The janitor had read enough headlines to recognize him, even without the cameras or the suits. But it wasn't the fame that made this moment surreal. It was the unexpectedness of it all. Why was he here? What was Barron doing in this school? What was he hiding from the world? Before the janitor could voice his curiosity, Barron spoke up. His voice was soft, almost unsure, yet it carried an unmistakable hint of urgency. "I need help," Barron said. "I don't know who to trust." The janitor was taken aback. What did that even mean? A teenager, the son of a former president, asking for help. This was not what anyone could have expected from the son of one of the most famous families in the world. The janitor's instinct told him to keep his calm, but his curiosity was getting the best of him. "What kind of help?" he asked. Barron looked around, making sure no one was near. The school's empty hallway seemed to amplify the silence, making everything feel heavier. It was as if the entire building had paused, waiting for Barron's next words. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I need someone who won't ask questions," Barron whispered. "Someone who will just listen." The janitor's mind raced. What could a teenager like Barron Trump possibly need from someone like him? A man who swept floors and mopped up spills, who didn't even have a name that anyone would remember. But the janitor felt something stir within him, a sense of responsibility, of wanting to do the right thing, even if it meant stepping into a world that was far beyond his own. Barron's eyes locked onto his, and for a brief moment, the janitor felt the weight of the world in those young eyes. What was Barron running from? What did he need that only a janitor could provide? The questions hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. The janitor, unsure of how to proceed, did something unexpected. He nodded. "Okay, I'll help," he said, his voice steady. Barron looked surprised, but there was a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. He had expected resistance, maybe even disbelief. But here, in this quiet corner of the school, the janitor had made a choice to help. What Barron would ask next was something the janitor could never have anticipated, something that would drag both of them into a situation that neither could have ever imagined. With a deep breath, the janitor followed Barron as he led the way down a path that would uncover secrets, challenge loyalties, and put them both in the middle of a storm they were ill prepared for. As they turned a corner, the janitor couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming, something he wasn't ready for, but couldn't escape. To be continued. As the janitor followed Barron through the dimly lit hallways, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of trepidation. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the lockers, amplifying the silence between them. Barron walked briskly, almost as if he were in a hurry, glancing over his shoulder every few moments as if to ensure no one was following them. The janitor could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, yet he couldn't fully grasp what was going on. Barron had led him to an unused storage room at the far end of the school. The room was tucked away, hidden behind a set of locked doors that hadn't been opened in years. The janitor hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should go any further. But Barron was already inside, looking over his shoulder with wide eyes, urging the janitor to follow. "Come on, we don't have much time," he whispered urgently. With a deep breath, the janitor stepped in, and the door clicked shut behind him. The room was dark, filled with old furniture and boxes of forgotten supplies. A single overhead light flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Barron's face was illuminated just enough for the janitor to see the unease written across his features. He had the look of someone who had been carrying a heavy burden for a long time, a burden he wasn't sure how to share. "I didn't want to come here," Barron said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's the only place I could think of. I don't know who else to trust." The janitor could feel the sincerity in Barron's voice, but the confusion only deepened. Why had Barron come to him, of all people? What was it that he couldn't tell anyone else? Barron continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. "My family, they're not who everyone thinks they are. There's so much more going on behind the scenes. Things that people would never believe. And I can't take it anymore. I need to get out of the spotlight. I need to disappear. But there's a plan, and if I don't follow it, if I don't do exactly what they want, I don't know what'll happen." The janitor's heart began to race as Barron's words sank in. The mention of a plan and the idea of needing to disappear were far beyond anything the janitor had ever imagined. He was just a man who cleaned up after others, who dealt with the day-to-day tasks that no one else wanted to handle. He had no business being caught up in something as deep as this. "What are you saying?" the janitor asked, his voice low, barely able to grasp the reality of the situation. "What's going on? What are you talking about?" Barron paced the room, wringing his hands nervously. He looked at the janitor, his face filled with a mix of fear and desperation. "There's this organization. They've been pulling the strings behind everything for years. My father, he's been involved in it. But I don't want to be part of it anymore. I never asked for any of this. They've kept me in the shadows, kept me away from everything, just so they could control me. And now, they've put me in a situation where I have no choice but to do what they say. But I'm not going to let that happen. I'm done." The janitor stood there, trying to process the information. This was more than just a boy trying to escape from his family's legacy. This was about power, control, and secrets that reached far beyond the school's walls. But Barron was determined, and for reasons the janitor couldn't yet understand, he felt a deep pull to help. He had no idea what he was walking into, but he couldn't turn back now. Barron needed someone who wasn't tied to the web of power, someone who could act without fear of consequences, and for reasons unknown to him, that someone was the janitor. "What can I do?" the janitor asked, his voice steady despite the racing thoughts in his mind. He didn't want to get involved, but he could see the anguish in Barron's eyes. He couldn't just walk away. Not when this young man seemed to be standing at the edge of something far bigger than either of them. Barron paused, looking at the janitor with a mixture of hope and fear. "There's someone who can help me. A friend of mine. But they're in danger. I need to warn them. If we don't act fast, it'll be too late." Before the janitor could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from outside the room, and Barron's eyes widened in panic. "They're here," he whispered, fear flooding his face. "We need to go, now." The janitor's heart skipped a beat. Who was Barron running from? Who was hunting him? The tension in the room mounted as they both stood frozen for a moment, listening intently for any sign of movement. The door to the storage room rattled as someone tried to open it, and Barron's face drained of color. "Please," Barron urged, "you have to help me. We have no time." The janitor didn't think, didn't hesitate. Without another word, he grabbed Barron by the arm and pulled him toward the back exit of the room. The door creaked open, and they slipped into the dark hallway just as the footsteps grew louder, signaling that whoever was outside was getting closer. As they moved quickly through the maze of corridors, Barron's voice broke the silence. "You don't understand. This isn't just about me. This is about everything. If I don't get to my friend, if I don't stop them from doing what they're planning, it's not just my life that'll be ruined. It'll be everyone's." The janitor's mind raced, but all he could think about was getting out of the building undetected. They rounded a corner, and Barron suddenly stopped, his eyes scanning the hallway in front of them. "We're too close," he murmured. "They'll find us if we don't move fast." A chill ran down the janitor's spine as he realized just how dangerous this had become. He wasn't just cleaning floors anymore. He was a part of something that could change everything. The weight of what they were about to do pressed heavily on him, but there was no turning back now. Barron was depending on him, and the janitor had no idea what would happen next. But he knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same. To be continued. As they crept through the dark hallways, every step seemed to echo louder than the last. The janitor's heart was racing, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Barron led him through a series of secret passages in the back of the school, but they both knew that it wouldn't be long before they were found. The janitor kept glancing over his shoulder, hearing the faint sound of voices getting closer. Whoever was after them, they weren't far behind. Barron's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear, but there was something else in them now: determination. He wasn't just running from something, he was running towards something. "We're almost there," he whispered, more to himself than to the janitor. "We have to get to the back gate. There's a car waiting for us." The janitor nodded, his mind still racing to piece together the puzzle. What was Barron running from? Who was chasing him? And what did this car have to do with the plans Barron was so desperate to stop? But there was no time for answers. They had to move fast, and the only thing that mattered now was getting to safety. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps grew louder, and Barron grabbed the janitor's arm. "They're too close. We can't risk getting caught." He stopped dead in his tracks, scanning the hallway ahead. The janitor followed his gaze and saw a door leading to the outside. It wasn't much, but it was their only chance. They sprinted toward the door, but as they reached it, a loud bang echoed from behind them. The janitor turned just in time to see a group of men in dark suits rounding the corner, their eyes fixed on Barron. "Stop right there," one of them shouted. Barron didn't hesitate. He shoved the door open and motioned for the janitor to follow. The two of them rushed outside into the cold night air, the sound of their pursuers' footsteps fading behind them. But the tension didn't ease. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger was only just beginning. Barron led the way toward the waiting car, which was parked just beyond the school's perimeter. The janitor's heart was pounding in his chest as he followed, the weight of everything they'd just escaped hanging over him. What Barron had revealed about his family, the dark secrets, the hidden plans, was more than the janitor had ever bargained for. But now it was too late to turn back. Barron needed him, and the janitor couldn't abandon him now. As they reached the car, Barron turned to the janitor, his face filled with both gratitude and urgency. "You don't know how much this means," he said quietly. "You saved my life tonight. But it's just the beginning. There's so much more I have to do. So many people need to know the truth." Before the janitor could respond, the car doors swung open, and Barron climbed inside. The janitor hesitated, his mind still reeling from everything that had happened. He never expected his night to turn into a life-altering adventure. But somehow, despite all the chaos and uncertainty, he felt a strange sense of purpose. He had played a small part in a much bigger story, one that would change everything. As the car sped off into the night, the janitor stood there for a moment, watching the taillights fade into the distance. He didn't know what Barron's next move would be, but he knew this: the young man's fight wasn't over. The truth still had to come to light, and the world would never be the same. For the janitor, life would go back to normal in a sense. He would return to his quiet routine, sweeping floors and cleaning windows. But he would never forget the night he helped Barron Trump escape a world of secrets and power. The simple, everyday man had found himself in the middle of something extraordinary. And though the story had come to an end, the impact it left on him was undeniable. Sometimes, the most unexpected people end up playing the most important roles. It's easy to overlook the janitor, to think of them as just another background figure in the story of someone else's life. But in reality, everyone has a part to play, whether they realize it or not. And for the janitor, helping Barron Trump escape that night wasn't just about saving a life. It was about realizing that no matter how small or unnoticed a person may seem, they always have the power to make a difference. As for Barron, his journey was just beginning. The world wasn't ready for the truth he was about to reveal, and the dangers ahead was still unknown. But one thing was certain: his life would never be the same, and neither would anyone else's. And so, the janitor's story came to an end. But the ripples of that night, the choices made, and the lives forever changed, would echo far beyond the walls of that school. Sometimes, it only takes one unexpected moment to set everything into motion, and to remind us all that the truth, no matter how hidden, always finds a way to come to light.